Alright, part 2 for today, solving inequalities by multiplication and division with one-step inequalities. So these are all for positive numbers, multiplication and division. You can multiply both sides of an inequality by the same number and the result will not change. So for instance, they take this example, 12 is greater than 7, and they multiply both sides by 3, and they end up getting 36 is greater than 21, and the result is still the same. The right side is bigger than the left side, so it won't change the overall result. Same thing if you divide both sides by the same number. You can see in the bottom example, they divide both sides by 5, and we started off with 35. 35 is greater than 15. Once we divided 5 on both sides, we got 7 is greater than 3. Does not change the result. The right side is greater than the left side. Alright, so we can solve these types of problems using that knowledge, just like any other problem that we've dealt with an equal sign. So I'm not going to graph the solutions this time to save some time, but here we would divide by 3 on both sides to get x by itself, and we'd be left with x is greater than negative 9. So not including negative 9, but anything larger than negative 9. Remember then, for something like b, you can divide by 2/3, which is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So what we can do on both sides is multiply by 3/2. So everything cancels out over here. R is less than, we can do a quick calculation. 3 times 3 over 1 times 1 is 9 over 1, or just 9. So R is less than 9, not including 9, but everything less than 9. And we can leave it just like that. So these are positive division and multiplication steps. And you might be wondering what happens then if you have a negative number. And you've seen me go over an example very similar to this one. It might have been exactly like this one. 2 is greater than 1. But if we were to multiply or divide both sides by negative 1, let's say I was going to divide both sides by negative 1. It's legal, I can do that. Alright, so 1 divided by negative 1 is negative 1, and 2 divided by negative 1 is negative 2. Well, now which side is bigger? Now my sign is facing the other direction. So we have a rule. Whenever we multiply or divide by a negative number, we have to flip the sign around. Okay? So as you'll see in this chart, we start with 8 is greater than 4. If we multiply both sides by negative 2, then we have negative 16 and negative 8. Well, negative 8 is now the larger of the two, and you can see that when we multiply by a negative, the signs have to flip. Same thing on the bottom if we were to divide by a negative number. So 12 divided by negative 4 gives me negative 3, and 4 divided by negative 4 gives me negative 1, but the sign has to flip around. So multiplying or dividing by a negative will result in a flipped sign. So real quickly here, if we were to solve for x in this particular example, we'd have to divide by negative 8 on both sides. So whenever we divide by that negative, we got to flip our sign the opposite direction. X is less than negative 9. And here's how you can check this. Anything less than negative 9 should fulfill this equation. So for instance, we can go back up here and plug something in. So what's less than negative 9? Well, let's try negative 10. Negative 10 is less than 9. So if I take x is negative 10 and plug that in for x, I get negative 8 times negative 10, which is positive 80, which is greater than 72. And that should work out every time. If you want to try a number that won't be a part of the solution, try plugging in something that isn't less than negative 9, like 0 or 1. Like for instance, if you put 1 in for x, you'd get negative 8 is greater than 72, which is not true. And that's okay because that's not part of our solution. So you can always go back and check these two. And lastly, x is being divided by negative 5, so I'd have to multiply both sides by negative 5. But once I do that, I got to flip my sign around. I get negative 5 times negative 3, which is 15, and x is less than or equal to 15, and we can go ahead and check that answer too. But just want the big thing to take away here is if you multiply or divide by a negative to solve, you have to flip the symbol around. And that's all I've got for you today.